Welcome to Lumin Wisdom School. This presentation will serve as a general overview of the school. Today we're going to talk to you about what we do here at the school, how we do it, our overall teaching philosophy, the types of learning environments that are out there in the world and the one in which our school embraces, and the typical student that finds themselves within our school. So what we do, overall, Lumin Wisdom School specializes in guiding wanderers towards increased illumination and greater degrees of positive polarity. Our school is well suited for those who may have derived benefit from, but do not necessarily fit within the confines of the spiritual greenhouses or walled cities of the world. Our unique approach is a liberated amalgamation of various traditions, uniquely blended to provide our students with optimal progression and a unique experience. So to touch upon a few key points here, first is the idea of wanderers that our school caters to. And this is the idea both if you have the personality of a wanderer or explorer type, where you find yourself studying many traditions or at many different places, but not necessarily wanting to call one home. That's typically what we enjoy here, is that idea of learning many different things and kind of exploring and integrating those things into our overall being. And so if you have that tendency, you may find yourself at home here. And if you find yourself just sort of exploring about and learning a little bit here and there, and collecting the various puzzle pieces, this could be a very interesting thing for you. Now, the other aspect is that idea of wanderers and starseeds, the idea being that the souls from other places, and what's in terms of like extraterrestrials and things of that nature, that idea of incarnating here on Earth, but knowing there's something different about you. And if you're familiar with that, and if that resonates with you, again, perhaps this would be of interest to you, because there's a lot of the things that we've studied as part of the school and know are of that background, basically. And it's more of what we view as more of a cosmic perspective in that way. And so there is an underlying kind of theme about that, but it doesn't have to be. If you're not, if you're not necessarily a wanderer and you're looking for more of a, guided essence of study, so to speak, and you're not familiar with that, that's okay too. You're welcome here as well. But if you found that resonates with you, then perhaps this could be something that's of interest. And then the objective of illumination and the idea of illumined hearts and minds, that idea of awakening the super coherence and the ability of just tapping into this super intuition and idea that's inherent within the heart and mind when you do certain alignments. That's really one of the things we really touch upon here at the school, is that idea of tapping into these what I would consider ascended abilities, basically, and doing things of that nature that manifest as a result of this work. And this is work that goes back to the early spiritual traditions, and then obviously the early mystery schools and things of that nature. And what we do focus on here is we do focus on positive polarity, or what we would consider like the light or white side, or constructive aspects of creation. And so this is more of a builder type culture, constructive, healing, things of that nature. And so whereas the destructive aspects are out there, and we may touch upon them from time to time just to kind of give you an overall essence of the overall playing field in the world, the focus here is on building and healing, and both ourselves, other individuals, and the world, and ascending culture, consciousness in general. And so that's where we're at here, just to inform you of that focus in that way. And then the other aspect is we do a liberated amalgamation of various traditions. And what we mean by this is essentially the idea that many of these aspects that, and we'll talk about some of this in the learning environments in terms of walled gardens and walled cities, the idea that many of these mystery traditions have been kind of walled off and sealed away, and initiates learn these things and they're kept there, and they're very specific in what you learn and how you do it. And we're looking to do something a little different here, and the idea being that we would remove those walls in a way and kind of have it be a little bit more of an open environment in that way, and accessible, and for those willing to do the work and with an interest in progressing down that path. and not necessarily drawing upon one tradition, but then many traditions. And we've done the alchemical sort of thing where you have a tradition, break it down, remove its essence, and then remove the superfluous stuff, and then also work and combine those with those other things in other ways. Now, with that too, it's interesting in that we do have some foundational work, and we do that. So there will be things drawn upon in certain traditions that will, they'll seem more or less complete. But the idea is there's certain things that we found that work very well, and so they should remain in place. And so we do draw upon those. So if you've studied some of those other things in other places, you might say, oh, I've learned that there, or I know this aspect, and that's good. But there are other things drawn in from other places. And as we're learning over time, that's what's we're rolling these new things in and verifying them here as well, and doing that. And so the school as an entity in and of its own, and it's evolving just as we are. And so this is it's always going to be a work in progress, as each one of us is as unique expressions of Source. Now, the last part is the unique experience. And so we do have tracks of study that have been identified that work well in terms of following a trail of breadcrumbs, so to speak, and learning these things and integrating them into your everyday experience. But also, we work to tailor each thing that you have a unique experience. And so feedback loops, things of that nature, and ultimately ability to kind of integrate these things into your own individual life and your own individual experience. And so, because that is really the only thing that matters, is your own individual experience. And so as you do the work, you're going to integrate this in your own unique way, and it's going to manifest in its own unique way. And so by default, even though we do have some standardized programs, it's going to be unique for you and tailored in that way. And so too, as we get to know you, it'll be easier to kind of tailor that and build upon that too, and further cater to your needs as an individual student as well, and then how you fit within the overall context of the school, and kind of allow that to fall out. And so again, just to kind of revisit this is, this is, if you have that wander type being about you, then this may be of interest to you. But we do cater, we do accept all in terms of those willing and interested in doing the work, seeking to have an illumined heart and mind, and striving towards that white light, and growing that within themselves, and having that healing effect on themselves, or environment, and the overall consciousness of the world in general, and then willing to step out upon the various trails and various traditions. And there's some uncertainty with that it's not necessarily just one thing or one way, that there's kind of the truths are constantly evolving in this way, and then you willing to do the individual work that it takes to do that. So how we do it, this is basically our approach within the school. And so if you look at the apex of the pyramid, if you think of the school as a pyramid, and each one of us can be considered a microcosmic pyramid as well, but within the overall context of our school, the top is healing. That's our ultimate reason for being, is healing ourselves, others, and the world about us. Now, this isn't what you may view, and it does include some of it, but what you'd consider a healer or doctor or things of that nature. There's an innate, as you do the spiritual work and as you study the mysteries of the universe, there's a certain energy that unlocks with you that has a natural healing effect. And so we do that, but then also, and so a lot of the healing is of a non-directed nature, we would say, but then there's also techniques for accelerating that as well. But there's a lot that goes into this, besides it's not necessarily just studying healing techniques and things like that. There's some of that, but over time, as you develop this, they sort of fall away, because your overall being will have a healing sense about you, basically, and that will go about that. And so primarily this is brought about, our approach is brought about through healing through the communication of wisdom, and that permeates all levels of our school, or as represented in the pyramid here. And the communication occurs through, you're going to receive knowledge in terms of the studies you receive, emails, various ebooks, digital courses, things of that nature, that communicates these things to you, and they activate the life principle within you. And allow you to do things that you might not have been able to do without doing these, in terms of at least this deeper knowing and this ability to study more at a faster rate, because it opens up your deeper intuition and supercognition and allows you to process more faster and do more than you would have done just through your ordinary practice or just on your own through your intellectual mind. You tap into different energies and higher forces in this. And so, and you know, through that we do this in more of what I would consider like an internet format, basically. You know, all pretty much you can do everything distance-wise through, as you're watching this presentation, through video or through emails or through reading books and things of that nature. And all, you know, primarily the work is inner work, and so you can do it in that way. And then the wisdom aspect is brought about through three overall elements or pillars that provide the foundation of the structure. And that's a combination of meditation, study, and spiritual service. And what that means is the meditation is a bit different in that it's not necessarily what you may think of just in terms of regular meditation, just the calming of the mind. There's more to it than that. And that is a result, but this is actually tuning into your inner self and higher evolved energies that have the capability to aid you in doing the work. And so there's that. There is a regular meditation routine that we would recommend that you would do as you progress through the school. But then there's also the study aspect that's important, you know, a daily study component, and that there's recommended reading that you go through. And these further attune you with the energies that are present and the intelligences, and they attune you to this energy just as the meditation does, and that you'll be able to tap into those currents as well as an aid of doing that, as well as deepening your knowledge. And then the other aspect is spiritual service, and what this entails is more of an integration within your daily life. And so this is the way we transmute knowledge into wisdom. And so it's good to know things like you'll gain insights through meditation, increased energies. You will study, you know, you'll gain book knowledge through studying, as well as insights, because it is written from a energetic source, primarily the study we recommend in this school. But then also, the service allows you to have a channel to move those energies. And so that's important in a number of ways. Is one, when you integrate this knowledge and insights received through meditation and study into your daily life, that's when you transmute knowledge into wisdom. That's when you take intellectual knowing and then it becomes real and it becomes a part of your overall being. And it's a test that we undergo in the matrix of our reality. Part of a reason for being here is to actually learn these things and allow these lessons to settle in. And it's through our daily experience that happens. And things will show up as you do this work that you'll need to navigate through. And it's individual for each person. But that is the aspect. Now, the other thing that the spiritual service does, and that integration, is it allows you to have a channel for these energies. And so it's like, I liken it to water, in that you don't want water to sit stagnant. It's very fresh to start out, but then over time it'll stagnate. You want that constant flow to go through you. And the spiritual service allows you to do that. It allows it to serve the channel. You know, there's the saying, to those who give shall be given, and so they may give again. And that's that idea, is the energies come to you and through you and out, and then you receive more, and you're constantly refreshed, and you don't allow that stagnation to occur. And so ultimately here in the school, we teach the healing through the communication of wisdom, brought about through digital means, digital courses, ebooks, email, things of that nature. And then we base that on a foundation of wisdom brought about through your daily experience of meditation, study, and spiritual service. So the overall teachings philosophy and what we believe in here is, this is an excellent quote from the book Highways of the Mind, which is a pathworking book by Dolores Ashcroft Norwicki. And this is an interesting book, basically the idea of just opening up other parts of your consciousness. And one of the passages in this book, it says, this is how it must be for all initiates. They must find those who are ready for such an experience and pass on all their knowledge. Students too must take that perilous inner journey of the soul and survive, if they can. A teacher can only help a student cope with the experiences. He cannot show exactly how to deal with them, for that must come from within. No teacher, however high his grade, may say, "You are what I have made you," for that is folly. Only the student can make himself. The teacher can only advise. And so this is really the core of the school, is this idea that there's you're an initiate in the idea that you're starting on a new aspect of your journey. You know, you've achieved a certain level of attainment to even be here, but then you must say yes to actually initiate the next stage of your journey, and that starts something new in motion. It sets new energies in motion, and you'll take these one step at a time as it unfolds. But that is, and so it's an initiation in that sense. And then there's other aspects of that term that we'll get into more as you get into the work. But that's at its basic essence in terms of this this passage that we'll go into here today. And there's a certain degree of readiness and people that are ready for an experience that are willing to receive this knowledge. And that's here at the school. We're looking at actually passing on all of our knowledge to others who are ready and will make use of this knowledge and are willing to do the work and to progress through the school. And the other thing to go through is this is a perilous inner journey. And it's interesting from an aspect in that all that you experience originates from within your consciousness, and it's reflected out to you in your world, out as a reflection of your body and within the world you experience. And so all journeys in that way are a journey of your soul, and your own individual soul is the guide, and we assist you with tapping into those soul energies and allowing that journey to continue to unfold. But you know, there are risks associated with that, but that's okay, because if they're showing up for you, nothing will show up that you can't handle on your own and through your own ability. And we guide you in that way and assist you in tapping into that inner knowing and that confidence to undertake this journey and as you go through there. And again, our role here is we help the students cope with the experiences. And so because each experience is unique to each person by design, we cannot tell you like we'll handle it in this way, but what we can do is to help you with as the things show up. If you have questions, or kind of help guide you along that way and kind of nudge you in the direction, or remind you of who you really are and that you are capable of handling this as these things show up. And so these are the things, but ultimately the decisions lie within you. The action must be taken within you, and the individual will and the mental resolve must reside within you to do that. When all those things come together, then you'll move that. And the best of us stumble on the path from time to time, and we help others as we've been helped to continue on with the journey, basically. And so there's this interesting part as you conclude this, is that there's no making of someone else. Each person makes themselves, and so we serve as advisors in that way of tapping into who you truly are and listening to your own inner guidance. And so it's a more of what I would consider like an advisory capacity in this way. And so these are the types of learning environments that you'll encounter out in the world, or you may have encountered, depending on your experience level. And one of those is what we will refer to as the greenhouse. And the greenhouse is interesting. If you look at these photos, it looks like a nice, comfortable environment. It looks to be climate controlled. There's uniform lighting. There's enough water and nourishment for everything there. And if you look at the picture on the right, it has a uniform look about it. All the plants look healthy, but they all look very much the same. Now, this uniformity is conducive to most experiences out there, and what most experience out in the world, or you'll experience as you study down these spiritual places and things. And not to say this is good or bad, it just is. It's designed for a certain type of person, a certain type of experience. And you may have experienced it, enjoyed it, or you may have for a time and become a little bored with it, but that's okay. And it's just to kind of inform you, or perhaps this resonates with you to a certain extent. But the greenhouse we'd envision is like a walled city. And so if you think about the idea, and this is especially true in Europe, if you look at old European cities, they have a wall and a moat around them. And most of the moats have dried up and of that nature. But the idea was a city, there's this wide expanse of land, and you'll see this little grouping, or this dense grouping, I should say, as it could be quite large sometimes. But the idea is it's not spread out. It's very close together, and there's a wall around it. And the idea is that wall serves as protection. It keeps out the negative influences and the danger. But then the wall also keeps out good things as well at times. And so the idea is there's this walled city that it serves to protect, but it could also be to limit. And most people who reside in those walled cities do not ever leave the walled city. That they're safe in there and they have everything they need and they don't want to leave. And when people travel to the city, they likely don't want to hear the new things that the person from outside the city learned. Now, I mentioned earlier the wanderer and explorer personality. And that's the idea too, is many of these wanderers, we would move between city and city and gain certain insights and then move on to another city and learn new things and then feel the urge to move on to yet another one. And this is part of that approach, is that the greenhouse is the walled city or walled garden. And what's typical of such places is the controlled and somewhat predictable conditions. Again, both good and bad, in that it's good in that, and it's all a matter of perspective, just like in all things are. Is that it's control conditions, you're going to be in a comfortable temperature, and everything's going to be predictable. Sun always rises at a certain, at the beginning of the day. Certain things, you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same time. It's always guaranteed. There's no real upset in the conditions. And in terms of spiritual learning, you're going to learn a certain thing, a certain amount every single week, and you're somewhat guaranteed a certain level of progression if you follow that specific path. But you won't go slower or faster, so to speak. It's very group oriented and group tied in there. And that is very structured, and there's not really a room for individual movement in that way. And then it has, in addition, it's collective development, as we discussed. It's mainly caters to the needs of the group, regardless of the individual within their group. And there's a perceived safety in numbers. And again, like all perception, there's truth to it, but then there's also a negative aspect to it too, because when you're inside the group and inside the walled city, there is that safety in numbers. But then in a way, there's a kind of just a false sense of security in a way too, in that over time, you may tend to believe you know everything, or the group may believe they know everything there is to know, and that there's not really anything outside there. And then if you ever find yourself cast outside the city or become bored with the city and move on, and you've believed that and fallen into it, then it can be a bit of a tricky situation, in that there's a degree of self-reliance and things like that comes into play, and you find that you have to deconstruct a lot of old truths basically to make rooms for new ones as you encounter a new world. And so again, that is perception like anything else. And this has to do with like homogeneous development. Standardized cookie cutter, like in the previous slide with that other picture, all the plants look like the same. And so if you want to look like that plant and be like that plant, especially if that sort of place churns out those plants, or that greenhouse, you will become in that way. It's very high probability that you will do that. But if you're looking for diversity and new ideas, probably not the place. They're very older and traditional and set in their ways, and there's value in that. But then on the other hand, it could be very, very limiting if you have that kind of wander type way about you. Now, the other aspect is the meadow of freedom, or the other major learning environment that we've identified. And this comes from individual experience, but if you compare it with the other environment was enclosed, it was comfortable, it was nice. Now, the meadow of freedom, it's Wild West, right? It's very open, very just airy. There's a bit of fog over it, or mist, and there's uncertain. There's a path winding upwards, and gradually winding upwards, and you don't really know what's around the corner. There's something new, and so a lot of this is new and hasn't been. The path hasn't unfolded yet, and so there is a lot of uncertainty in that way. And then you have mountains off to the background in that way too, and so denotes a certain degree of peril in that way. But that it's all in the perception. There's no walls enclosing things here, and so things may have access to you, or the dangers may have access to you, but so too do the benefits and the other knowledge and the other fruit that you may gain through operating in this environment, learning these new things. And and so it's really more of a matter of preference. But if we consider that meadow of freedom, it's a wide open space, literally. Go anywhere you want to go, learn things, move about, do these various things. There is a path that could be outlined, but there's mobility within that path that you can, or you can leave the path and explore a side trail or just wander off or do whatever you're going to do. But the benefit of the Meadow of Freedom is that you have that complete freedom of exploration, and then you have the ability to see clearly without obstruction or walls, so that the walls aren't around you, and that you can, again, they're not there to protect, but they also don't obscure, and you're not getting, there's things you're learning through direct experience in that way. Now, this could be perceived as good or bad, but it's the uncontrolled and unpredictable as well, is that you never, it's not that guarantee, you're not guaranteed a certain level of progression or a certain level of unfoldment. It's all highly dependent on your own individual effort. And so you can move as fast or as slow as you want and what you're ready for. And there's, you may find yourself doing, you could be in a loop at times, or moving faster at other times, but that's kind of the interesting part too, in that there's other opportunities that present themselves, and then also perils that show up, because you don't know what will show up. But again, if they are showing up, then you have the ability to overcome them, or they wouldn't show up. And the other aspect too is, if you think about the wind blowing against the mighty oak, it makes it stronger. And so it is with you. As you encounter these things, you will become stronger and more capable as you go through this. And then also the kind of risky or exciting, depending on your point of view, is it's unproven. Many of the things is that there are, some of these things we've gone through before, but then there are aspects you'll discover that will be new to you, and so it's all, it'll all unfold in a very unique and individual manner. And then this could be either, depending on the day, it could be very invigorating or confusing. Some days will be very exciting. You'll feel like you're in the rays of light, and you'll move forward very fast. You'll feel like you're walking upon this meadow of freedom in a beam of sunlight. But then other days you'll feel like you're in the deep valleys, and it might feel very difficult and slow going. And that's too where the school can help, and that others who have experienced that sort of thing can help get you unstuck if you need to, or offer encouragement as you go through that. As it is all within you, but sometimes it's nice to have that reminder. But ultimately, the most interesting part from our perspective is that every day is a new adventure. Everything, it's like reading a delicious novel. You start through and you open the book and turn to page 1, and something happens, and then you turn the next page. You don't know what's going to happen, and something occurs. And so you could begin to look at your life as every day like that novel, just something new unfolding in a very unique way. So this is an interesting quote from Joseph Campbell within The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. But if you have, you'll understand the idea of mythology and cosmological cycles, and the idea of this repetition, and there being an archetypal blueprint of creation. And it's one of the interesting passages that felt very relevant to our school, was that so the freedom to pass back and forth across the world division, from the perspective of the apparitions of time to that of the causal deep and back, not contaminating the principles of the one with those of the other, yet permitting the mind to know the one by virtue of the other, is the talent of the master. So that's one of the aspects of spiritual masteries as you go through your spiritual journey, is that there's this idea. If you think of this old alchemical image on the slide, there's this idea of the person in the world, or the regular everyday experience of creation and the bounds of creation as established by the Creator, and then striving into the unknown in these other planes of existence that are out there, that are through our own inner exploration and unfoldment, going into them, gaining insights, understanding how to operate in these various planes depending on the reality you step into, as they all have their own roles, and then becoming master of those various places within yourself, not of others, but then being able to move about as you see fit, and then coming back and bringing those insights to the everyday world and integrating those experiences within your daily life, and therefore demonstrating mastery of yourself and your environment. And then that brings about true freedom. And so it's this ability to step in and out, and to go and to do this over time, that will unfold with you. And as you go through, in the beginning it may be a bit uncertain and uneasy, but then over time, like anything, as you gain experience with an environment, you become more confident, and things unfold with greater ease for you, and you become more proficient in the worlds. And then you have that ability to kind of come and go as you will, and it really does become a delicious adventure that your life turns into, and it's anything but boring. And so this is a potentiality in terms of studying in this way and taking charge of your own development and tapping into your soul energies and allowing that to guide you and to do this sort of work. Then the other aspect that came from this same book that relates to the meadow of freedom, the cosmic dancer declares, Nietzsche does not rest heavily in a single spot, but gaily, lightly, turns and leaps from one position to another. And so, this describes the wanderer explorer to a T, in my opinion. This is perfect. It's that idea of a body never truly being at rest, and that grace that comes from being able to move about environments and going in and out and doing different things in different places and learning different things. And it really is a fun and fascinating thing to do. And so you gain the skill and grace of a dancer as you gain this mastery, and you can leap from one position to another. Almost if you think of the book Hero with a Thousand Faces, the idea of creation having these various archetypes, it's that idea of the dawn and release roles at will within your everyday life and consciousness. It's really an interesting aspect. And so that's the potentiality as you embrace the meadow of freedom rather than a controlled environment. And then also, if you look at that, this too, the interesting thing with this is that if you think of a greenhouse and plants, we'll go back to that analogy. There's the idea of the plants being somewhat homogeneous, and it's like the idea of a typical human being. If they're within the realm of our present belief system, if they're fed and watered to a certain extent, and the information is provided in a certain way, that some outcome will happen. It'll be an average outcome. Now, if you've ever done work with orchids are interesting, and that they're very different from other plants, is that they're highly individuated. And so they have there's a collective aspect in that they belong to that aspect of being an orchid. But there's also an idea that every orchid requires a different amount of care. So if you have orchids in your home, or if you've dealt with them, you can't necessarily do a general routine with them. You could start off with that in terms of watering and sunlight and things of that nature, but they require very different things per individual orchid. And so there takes time over years of learning the needs of the individual orchid. And you can go so far as naming them and kind of interacting with them in terms of your consciousness, but there's this idea that there's one size does not fit all when it comes to an orchid. And that's also in addition to the wanderer explorer type. It's, if we were to view our typical student as, I would say it's like an orchid. It's basically anything but typical, in that we can generalize in that way, but the needs are very different and individualized. And so, but it is that commonality of desire, and a certain level of wanting to desire a spiritual attainment and have that healing effect on the world. And so that's where we come together in that way. But we recognize the individuated nature of each person and the individual nature of that, and tailor our approach to work around that. But the orchid's interesting in that way if you've encountered them, in that they are they have a very unique expression. They have a certain beauty because of that uniqueness, but then they also have some commonality of belonging to orchids, and people within our environment are very much the same way. There's some commonality in terms of purpose and desire, but then there's that very different too in various ways, which keeps it very, very interesting. And just to touch upon some of these key points associated with the orchid, uncontrolled variable conditions, that's where they thrive. So in other places where the greenhouse plants would not. And so it's the same if you think of people in the same way, in that if you're an orchid type, wanderer, explorer, to throw other labels out, you may seek out or thrive in these uncontrolled variable conditions that other people shy away from. unstructured, highly individuated development, can step into structure. And we do have some structure with the school. It is useful in terms of getting the overall track and kind of getting people into a rhythm. But beyond that, there's other things you can do as you kind of have that baseline. And so the baseline is useful, and then you can go back to it as you need to, and stray away from it, and individuate more as you do that. And then there's strength within oneself that's important to the orchid, in that there's strength of coming. It's almost like you're strong individually, but then you'll come together with others to achieve things and be stronger yet that you might not have been able to do on your own. Or you will at some point ultimately, but it shaves off significant amount of time and learning off the timeline, which is the purpose of time, is to allow us to learn these certain things. And then these lessons will serve to accelerate time. And so when you know this, you can come together with others to do this in a way. Orchids, again, very heterogeneous, very different compared to, it's not necessarily one-size-fit-all approach. And the orchid, and within our environment, we say diversity embraced and applauded in that way. And so ultimately, I would ask, does this describe you? Do you consider yourself a free thinker? Not necessarily confined by the bounds of society or things that are out there. And it doesn't mean necessarily you don't necessarily rebel for the sake of rebelling or things, but this, not necessarily believe everything you're told, but you'll question, well, why is that? Because the truth, the truth always stands up to questioning. And so you may find yourself to be of a questioning type, or a walking question mark. And do you have the inner impulse to know this idea? Why are certain things a certain way? Why is this? Why does creation work this way? Why is reality this certain way? And maybe this desire to tap into the more esoteric realms of our being, and that inner wanting to know yourself better and all of creation better in that way. Perhaps are you a wanderer and explorer of life? Somebody that may stay inside a walled city or garden for a time, but then also thrives on the meadow of freedom, likes to wander a bit and go out and learn some new things, and then come back to walled city and share what they know and do things. And do you find yourself not quite fitting into one place or mold? You go through that, and that perhaps you could be a chameleon and fit in and do what you need to do for a time to keep harmony, and to allow things to allow yourself to learn and do things in a certain way, and respect and honor a group that you may belong to, but it's not really home for you, that you find yourself kind of wandering a bit over time. Do you find yourself as being comfortable and thriving in uncertainty, seeking out the perils of the world and the treasures that lie behind those perils, and actually taking those perilous inner journeys? Perhaps this is for you if you're ready for such a journey. Do you voluntarily seek out growth catalysts? And so this idea that everything shows up within our lives for a reason, that if you recognize this and you ask the question continuously, what is this for? Why is this happening? Not from a judgmental woe is me standpoint, but from a opportunity, what fruit can I extract from this? And how can I keep, as I start to recognize why these things are showing up in my life, I could start actually leaning into them and actually maximizing the fruit I extract from each thing, and therefore accelerating time and my progression along my path and within this lifetime. And so if you seek out those growth catalysts and kind of find yourself jumping into the unknown, then this perhaps could be a good thing for you. And overall, do you find yourself resonating with the purpose of accelerating individual and planetary evolution through expansion of consciousness? And so this is this idea that all things are conscious life, and everything is in a state of becoming. And it's viewing the world as it's in a state of, it's a constructive state. Everything's being, looking at everything on the growing edge, seeing that everything has the potentiality to grow, and everything boils down to increase, and that the cosmic favors in increase in all ways. And so then you understand that as you undergo this journey, this inner journey yourself, you will experience increase. And as you provide increase for others, you will experience increase, others will experience increase, and then your overall environment will increase and rise up. And it's this idea of the alchemist redeeming lead to gold, things of that nature, and taking these elements, finding the purity within and extracting it, and having that essence. And so it is with your own individual consciousness, the consciousness of others. As you do the work, you will have a positive healing effect on others through that consciousness expansion, and then also your environment, and it'll start transforming around you. And so if that's something that interests you, and resonates with you at a deep level, this very much could be an interesting journey for you. So literally here at the Lumin Wisdom School, we cater to have a very unique experience in that whether you're a beginner to the ancient mysteries and the spiritual traditions, or if you're somebody who's experienced across other traditions but are looking for something a little different and just something new, or perhaps just something else to add on to your existing study, we have that unique experience here, and it's something that you will be transformed by doing the work, and others will be transformed in your presence as well as your overall environment. And ultimately, we're excited to see how spirit unfolds through you. Because it is very individuated, spirit manifests itself in a variety of ways. And just like that orchid, there's commonality, but it looks and has very different needs. So it is with you. And so you will manifest as you evolve and your consciousness increases and purifies. What will happen is you will manifest in a different being, in a source, in a different state of being. And there's always that interest in see how that happens within yourself, but those around you as you do the work, and you start seeing things happen. And by the fruits you shall know. And you see these things happening as you do the work. You will transform, others will transform in your experience, and the way you relate to the world and your environment will shift as well. And the illusion around you will start shifting as well. And it's a very fascinating thing. So I'd like to thank you for your time and your interest in our school. And if it's something that interests you and resonates with you, we encourage you really to go forward and to take the next steps, and to go through and to join with us and begin on this journey, and allow that and see how spirit will uniquely unfold through you.